Hey, this is Jared, host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast, and in this episode, I talk to Mr. Charley Valher from Outsourcing Angels on a website investment that he just made, where he went away and found a business that was making a whole heap of money. It's making $2,500 per month now. We break down the things that he learned in the process of doing his due diligence, the highlights that he went through in the whole process of buying this business, and what everybody else who's doing this should be looking out for as well. So if you're looking to go away and buy a website and start making money online, this episode is for you. Okay, so hey Charley, thanks for being on the podcast again, and most importantly, a massive congratulations on buying an online business. So today I have Charley Valher from Outsourcing Angels on the podcast, and Charley, tell me, how did you feel when you actually sealed the deal on this listing?
I tell you what, there was a touch of disbelief, because it had been one I'd been working on for a while. But when I finally got it over the line, I was honestly ecstatic. Like, it was a dance around the living room moment.
Love it.
Because I got it by email late in the evening and I was like, yeah, like you throw the hands in the air.
That's awesome. So it was on a Friday, so you had a pretty exciting weekend, and tell me, like, where did you find the listing?
Well, first off, Jared, I just wanted to say a big thank you to you, because honestly, you gave me a massive hand and some insights and things we discussed that made that so much easier to kind of win that deal and make it possible. So big shout out. Thank you so much. Like, made a huge difference, especially with like due diligence and looking into a few areas that I didn't have my eyes on. So I wanted to say that up front. But to your question about where this deal came from, something really interesting has been happening to me is, like, I've been talking more and more about buying websites and a lot of online stuff with yourself and other people. And what's funny is, like, when you talk to people about this stuff, it's interesting that sometimes opportunities come up that maybe don't normally come up. So just through my network, this deal was actually an off-market deal. This was a deal that actually came to me from a friend who said, hey, I know someone who's looking at selling a website. Did you want to take a look at it? Maybe it's of interest to you before it gets to market. So that's how it all came to be.
That's so cool. That's really cool. And thank you so much. Like, I'm more than happy to keep helping, you know. That's what I'm all about is making sure that everybody who wants to go down this track sort of, you know, comes off with a massive win, just like you did. And it's so crazy that sometimes people forget how powerful their network actually is. And that's something that I share with my community is like, look, you guys can sometimes, and I have had this happen to me before, is I've gone away and I've done different programs and been in different communities and gone away and made far more money from the community I was actually in than the program I was actually doing. And so the same with you, you know, your community is very, very powerful, and that's a great way to go about it, is asking around, or not just asking around, but things coming to you and being able to take that opportunity. So that's really, really cool. And so when this did come to you, what was your first initial thought, and what sort of due diligence did you jump in straight away? Because it's not like you're just scrolling through a website broker and you found it and then you could psychoanalyze it quick to whether it was worth you spending more time doing due diligence. So this is a little bit of a different one, but what was the first thing you went and did?
Yeah, so you do tackle a deal like this very, very differently. So the first thing is, I think you need to filter well. So straight up is like, you know, when you let's say you go on Empire Flippers or one of the big brokers, is like, it's easy to filter, like, you know, what's a good or not good deal for you, because there's like lists and you should have some rules hopefully on what type of deals you like to do. This one is a bit more opportunistic. So the thing I always look at when like an opportunistic deal kind of comes across is just like, I almost be very no, and you have to win me into a yes. Like, I don't try and just take advantage of the opportunity. I want to make sure it's a really great opportunity for me. And someone I love called Keith Cunningham, he always says, you know, if a pair of shoes that's a size, 15 is on sale for half price, even though it was a bargain, it's still a terrible purchase if you have size 10 feet. Like, it was never a good deal. It doesn't matter what the price was.
It's like those parents who go away and buy massive size shoes for their kids. Obviously that makes sense because they're going to grow into it. However, do you go away and buy something that is not something you particularly like wearing and then force yourself into growth into a business that you don't like? And so what you found was it's a business that you had to really analyze, was it for you? So how did you do that?
Yeah, so like I have a bit of a filter already. So it's like I just did things in a bit of a different order. So the first step in this type of process is I spent like a good hour with the site owner on the phone just talking about the business. So really like, asking all the questions that I wanted to ask, getting an understanding of like why it's up for sale, why you're considering selling it, what you would do with it in the future, all these dynamics that just make a really... I suppose can impact the sale and really doing a lot of listening. That was kind of that part of it. And then in that call, I also got access to things like the Google Analytics and also the financials. And I even got some little extra things that you probably wouldn't get normally, which was like the webmaster tools. So to get in there, or Google Search Console as it's known by today. So getting access to all of that stuff was like a part of this call as well. So that was like, the big handover everything so I could do some really good due diligence and then kind of take, step away from that conversation and then go through everything properly. Where in a normal deal, I probably get a chance to look at all the Google Analytics before speaking to someone. So this is a bit of a reverse order, which I think is, normal when this type of deal comes up.
Yeah, certainly. And so this... business, is it in a niche that you're interested in, or was it more so something that you sort of like, oh yeah, I really want to see where I can push this business with my expertise that you already have? Like how did it come about that you realized that this was a decent investment for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the first thing I looked at here was, number one, I was comfortable with the business model itself. So like, one of the filters which is really important for me is like, I don't want any local tie downs. So I don't want to buy something that has an office or a factory that I have to be at. And I don't want to get into any type of manufacturing or medical business I don't understand. So like I have a whole bunch of businesses I wouldn't buy just because of the restrictions it could put on my lifestyle or because of expertise I just don't have. What made this business, really attractive is, number one, I'll tell the business model time, I'm not going to be shy, is like, this is like an affiliate and advertising model. Like this is a site that could be a media site and be very, very attractive in a niche. So that is a model I'm very comfortable with and have a lot of experience with. So that was a big tick. The second thing, which this was like, I suppose we'll call it the icing on the cake, is it actually complements another site I own. So for me, there was extra leverage available in this site because it would actually, I suppose, bolt on really well to another site and business I own. So I looked at it and gone, well, I'm going to make use of this site's traffic and brand in a way that not many people can. And again, that was another really big tick for me.
So that's a really good point, is that when people have something else that is working for them and they can see they can add something to the toolbox or add something to the business which can feed each other, it's called a bolt-on business. And it's really cool that you already had something in place. And knowing that, Charlie, I've got a question. Like, it's a tricky one to really ensure you don't come unstuck with and have your head in the clouds, right? Because you do have a business where you can see, all right, cool, this is really good. It's going to help me grow this other business, and that other business that I have already is going to help me grow this business as well. What sort of things did you do to prevent yourself from putting your head in the clouds and perceiving that you're going to crush it in all levels, and instead get really stuck into the due diligence? Like, what were some of the things you did?
Yeah, so the first thing is like, it's having other people around you who have experience. Because like, obviously, as you can already tell, like I was getting more and more excited as I had seen these things. So it's like, I'm always aware when emotions get raised, so does stupidity in my case. So the more emotional, either positive or negative, so it's excited or angry, the worse my decision making is. And you've got to be really, really careful of that and aware of it. So, awareness is probably the first step. But then the second part of that is having people like yourself around, or the community we're a part of, or other people that have experience in this type of game to go, look, question my decision making here. Tell me why I'm right, or tell me why I'm wrong. So I always like to really introduce a level of like, okay, test my thinking. Like, is everything I'm looking at and the reasons I'm making a decision to buy this, do they seem logical to you? Does it make financial sense? Does it make sense from the bolt-on? Does it make sense on all those levels? And that really helped me a lot, again, with putting together a good offer and deal.
Cool. Well, that's really good. Is utilizing those people around you, again, having that network, and that just goes to show how powerful that is. Not just in finding stuff, but so many different levels and so many different aspects. And like, I've got so many questions. We could just talk about this for hours and hours and hours. But one important thing that I really wanted to ask was, like, what were some of the risks like that you saw, and how did you evaluate those risks in a way that you could see that it was worth taking, not so much of a risk, but how could you ensure that if you bought this, that wouldn't happen? And what were some of the risks you first initially saw, and then worked out whether it was worth pursuing or not?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think, the first thing I'll say is, like, every deal has risk. You can't have zero risk in a deal. What you can do, though, is minimize, mitigate, or remove. And I think it's really healthy to do all those. So in this case here, what used to work really well for this site and brand was actually social media. And like a couple of years ago, it was much easier to get traffic from social media or generate a following from social media. And as I suppose Facebook or Instagram or any of those platforms, as they'd kind of suffered from like the algorithms, if you would. You could see, like, if you went back 3 years on this site, you could just watch their social traffic declining. And you could see that SEO was taking up more of the traffic volume, and it was growing and doing reasonably well. So the big risk from my point of view is that what had worked for them in the past hadn't necessarily been what was going to work for them in the future from a traffic point of view. And that was a big one from my concerns. The other side of that, or like how I reduce that, is like, I've got a team that's very strong in SEO. I would say that's like our main skill. That's what my team does really well, is like, we do Google well. Anything on Google, whether it's SEO, YouTube or AdWords, like, that's a strength area for us. So I knew that my team was going to be able to grow traffic with this site, and I think that was going to make all the difference. Like, I was strong in the belief that we could do that well, so I wasn't too worried about the future of social or if that died. The second thing is, this site had some tech challenges and still does have some tech challenges. There's some features and things that have been kind of built and a few band-aids. So it's like, when you kind of like logged into it, is like, it's not as clean or nicely organized as I would like. It does need a bit of work. But again, with the team I have, I'm okay to do a bit of a renovation. But if you're someone that's less experienced, that's something you got to be really careful of with the risks, is buying a site that maybe needs 10 grand of work done on it and not knowing it, which is easy to do these days.
Yeah, certainly. And that's one massive thing that you mentioned before, is like, there is definitely risks in everything we do and every deal. It's just really understanding those risks. And then also, I like to say that all risk is minimized by education. So for you already had learnt the education around, what would happen if nothing went well with social. And you had the education and the knowledge to understand that it wasn't such a big problem, and also had the education to know which direction to push that website, which meant that wasn't such a high risk at all for you. But initially, for somebody who would be looking at buying that business, they could see that, this is a risky business, and they could walk away from a great deal only because they don't know how to manage that risk, or whether it was worthwhile taking that risk.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things I really threw into this equation here is like, I factored in how long it would take me to effectively like start this business from scratch and get it to this stage. So I sat down with like a spreadsheet and said, right, well, if I was going to go through building this site and building the traffic to this level and the brand assets and all that stuff, like how long would it realistically take me and what would it cost? And I used that as kind of a benchmark again to kind of decide what was worth doing or not worth doing in this deal.
Yeah, so you could see that, and I'll ask this as a question. So you obviously didn't buy this as a short-term play.
Definitely not. I don't buy anything for a short-term play. That's not my style. I'm someone who likes to have a project for quite a number of years. I'm very kind of cash flow focused. I like to buy assets I can turn into good cash flow that then I turn into more assets and accumulate. I do sell things every now and again, but I'm very much an accumulation and growth long game model.
I love it. I love it, especially just because the more that I learn and grow as being an investor, like I used to invest in the stock market and look at investing in so many different things. And I know there's so many people that trade, like day trade and do all this sort of stuff, and realize that long term, like it can create a lot of stress, and you're having to do so much for so many hours of the day. And not only that, but you have to pay a lot of brokerage fees, and it can all add up. And it can really, that's the sort of fees that people don't really take off the profit overall. And not just that, like looking at profit, yeah, it does take away from the profit, but it takes a lot of energy and time, and it can be stressful doing, shorter investments. And I think just the long term is certainly a very wiser approach, because you can think of the long term and you don't have to worry about a gazillion different things that could happen in the short term.
Yeah, totally. And like the way I kind of think about it, because it's such a relevant point, Jared, I love that so much, is basically this is how I kind of think about buying websites online. I'm basically looking to buy sites that I can buy for a price that is less than what it would cost me to create them myself and be far more efficient. So I'm making money on the way in. So if I'm buying a website, let's say I buy a website for $100,000, but it would have cost me $150,000 to build that site and maybe a couple of years to get it to that level. I've just saved that, and that's the way I view it. Okay, it's like awesome. I've just saved 2 years and $50,000 on buying a site at this level. Might need a bit of renovation work, but we'll take it from there. The second part is I then like to be paid along the way of owning the site. So I like to make money while I own the site. And then thirdly is like when I sell it, I then want to be rewarded on the whole picture. So I get paid 3 times very, very well if I complete the trifecta. But that's how I really kind of think about this model, is like it's so smart if you can enjoy all 3 parts. Like make money on the way going in and save time, make money along the way and build up cash flow, and then make even more money when you sell it. So there's 3 areas you can do well in.
Knowing, that's amazing, Charlie. And I want to add to that and explain a little bit more about the buying something that may cost you more to build. But firstly, it's really cool knowing that you could buy something that is already proven that there's a market out there that are buying the products and services or are using the website, rather than, even if you were to pay to build it, you could pay more than what you could for the cost of the business. However, there still may not be that market there, or those people that want to use those products or services. So to come back to the cost of starting a website business, it's crazy to me that everybody has the perception that it's quick, simple, easy, and cheap. And sure, if you want it to be a quick, simple, easy, and cheap website, you're not going to get a whole lot of value out of it. However, if you want something that is going to be a long-term game, which is what all most successful investors in the world use, is you want to spend a lot more time, have a lot more market research, and also spend more money to make sure it's really, really good and it's going to work for the long term. Now, that can be more than, $10,000, $20,000 sometimes. And people realize that, the people that go away and see these businesses for sale, around that price range understand that it could cost them more to build that. And I just really wanted to add that in, is because it's not just like I'm going to jump on WordPress or Google or Wix or whatever and start up a website and I'm going to start making money. It can take you years to get to that point as well, as opposed to buying one that has already has it already there in front of you. And congratulations on looking at it that way, Charlie, because it's a great mindset to have when coming into buying a business.
Oh, cheers, man. And I just want to loop back on that point there. It's like, I know some people that like they build sites from scratch, and their whole aim is they start a site from scratch, they build it for a duration of time, and then they sell it quite a few years later. Now, these guys, like, this is what they do for a living, and this is like they have a team and some really great assets, and even for them, it takes them 2 years to do a project. And I look at that and go, okay, well, the guys who know what they're doing, like they have experience doing it, if it takes them 2 years to do it, like if that's the benchmark, it just seems like, I don't know, a little bit of madness to be starting projects from scratch.
It is crazy, especially when somebody's built so many, and these guys are professionals and do it all the time. For the average Joe to go, I'm going to come away and make money online and just throw some paint on the wall and see what sticks. It's a scary thing because, well, it's what happened to me, epic failure. And it was great that I learnt from that lesson, but most people don't. And they come away and they look at the internet. I'm like, well, it's not easy to make money online, and how could, everybody's a scammer and all that sort of stuff. You should see some of the comments that I get on my actual, feed and comments and, posts and stuff like that.
I laugh so much, Jared. Some of them are amazing.
I got a really good one that I had a little, a thing. It was on the weekend. I get them like almost pretty much daily, where I had a post up where it said like, punch my boss in the face incentive sort of program for stuff that I do. And somebody called me such a wuss, and like I wouldn't punch anybody in the face. And I'm just like, I probably was a non-skilled laborer who was like earning next to nothing and just hated my life, and now I'm a con man. And
good transition. Well played.
Yeah, and I was just like, well, that's interesting, but I just commented them back. I was like, hey man, like look, like I went and did my apprenticeship for 3 years. After third year, they wanted me to become a foreman, so they signed me out early, and I started running the job, and I was earning good money, and I got out of it, and then I started doing this, and now everybody reaches out to me to do the same. And they went away and they just deleted the whole comment and just completely scrambled off the Facebook. And I was just being honest, and that's just, I come back to this point of like, a lot of people do think there are some scammers out there making money off people intentionally for themselves without caring about other people. And yes, they're out there, although it's really easy to stand on the outside and point fingers to go, this person's a con man or a con person, without actually digging in deeper. And that's all it is most of the people that comment, they just don't know. They just don't dig deeper. And that's fine. But the most important thing that I'm coming back to is that there is ways, and it's not just my way, but there is some great ways to go away and make money and be successful in things, if only you would open up and listen to those people.
Oh, definitely. I mean, not to side tangent or anything, but I probably think that person was probably just not enjoying their own life as much as they like. And that's where I think a lot of comments like that come from, is just like someone's unhappy with their own life, and it's easy to get online and be a keyboard warrior rather than make a change.
Yeah. And sorry, we definitely side tangent there, and I want to get back to a question other than talking about keyboard warriors that are in a different position. But Charlie, with this business, you went away and you had your team look at it, and you looked at it yourself and you did a bit of research. What were some of the things that you went away and looked at for yourself and thought, maybe we could grow it this way? And then what was some of the feedback that your team had given you?
Yeah, so that's another really good question. I can see you've prepared for this interview, Jared. Which is lovely. I love a high quality question. And plus you kind of making me think a little bit about what we put into this stuff and if we can improve it. But anyway, to answer the question, what we really looked at, like what I picked up on straight away was poor monetization. And what I mean by that is for the amount of traffic they had, or have, I should say, because it's still there, they weren't utilizing it very well. They're doing an incredibly poor job of turning traffic into like a list or an email list or a following. And then they were doing an incredibly poor job at turning that following or traffic into money through advertising or offers or anything like that. So there were some huge gaps in how this web business was actually working. So for myself, when I looked at this, I said, right, even if we don't increase the traffic, if we just deal with the traffic we're getting here in a much better way, which I'm confident we can do, like this is a home run for us. Like it really, really is. And then to throw in the idea of going, well, do we think we could increase this traffic? Which we do. We're very confident in that. It just stands to be that, if you can create more traffic or higher quality traffic, and then you also have a better way of dealing with it, that you're going to have great potential of kind of growing the site. Now, something we've actually discussed kind of like off air, which I'll bring into this conversation here, is that if you're going to go into this space or you're in buying online businesses, you kind of look at it and go, you don't really buy many sites without the intention of like growing them or renovating them. Like it's very rare to buy a site and go, well, we'll just leave it as is. It'll pay itself off. It's good cash flow. And I wouldn't really buy a site for that reason. So when I look at it and go, can I double this site in 12 months? Then it becomes like a great investment, because now I've paid for a site that's doubled what it's earning, and like the cash flow and value of the asset make it well and truly worth it. It really, really does. Not to mention, depending on your valuation, you're going to get your investment back really quickly as well.
Yeah, certainly. It's so important to understand that you can go away and buy a website and just leave it there, but it is gonna, it's not gonna keep growing unless there's processes and systems and people put in place that are gonna help grow it. I mean, if you're buying a business with a team and you maybe spend an hour like directing the team each week, great and awesome. However, if it's a one-man band, you can't expect to just buy something and have it in 10 years' time still performing the exact same results. And it's the same with any sort of investment as well. And we also did talk about that off air, Charlie, but I think what we should do, and we didn't talk about this, is maybe maybe another podcast on how to identify the low-hanging fruit for businesses that we're looking at buying, because that's exactly what I do when I go away and buy a business. Is I look at it and go, cool, if I'm going to go away and buy this, how can I myself or my team grow it in a certain way that it can grow month over month or year over year? And it's the same with my clients as well. Like they learn a whole lot on due diligence, but when you go away and do due diligence and a lot of other stuff that I teach is ways you can grow a business as well. It makes that investment so much more powerful. But how about like, if you're open to it, is doing a website, doing a podcast, on how we can identify low-hanging fruit for some investments we want to buy.
Absolutely. It's funny you even mentioned that, because I always make a list of like, I call it's easy wins, medium wins, and hard wins. And like when I'm going through a site and doing a bit of due diligence and my audit and all the rest, is like I put things into that category. So it's like, what can we knock out that's just easy? What's going to require a little bit of effort, but give us a reasonable amount of return based on that effort? And then what are the hard things that need to be done here, but are going to be worth it? And it's like, as I kind of build that out so that we have a list of like how we're going to tackle what we do on a project. And it's served us very well so far. So I'm more than happy to do that.
Awesome. So let's maybe chat about maybe one of each, or at least an easy win and then maybe a hard win. So what was one of the easier wins?
So the easy win on this site is, what would I say is probably the easiest win? It's been a few. Content. I'll give you a few really quick. So an easy win is updating content. There's a whole bunch of content on this site that just updated will get better rankings. So that was number one. Number two is the site speed. Like we are going to move servers and put it on something faster and just do a few things with like loading again. Like this will probably take my developer like a couple of hours, but like this will improve the business quite substantially. So those two were like super low hanging fruit. So just optimizing what's already there. That's maybe a week. We could do that really, really well and start seeing some results, but there's a lot to optimize on that front. From a medium term win, so like what sits in that middle ground, is coming up with an opt-in or some sort of way of building our email list. So this needs a little bit more effort, but it's like we really want to turn anyone who comes to the site into like a viewership, people that want to see more content from us and want to be on the list, and establishing like a regular communication channel.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so for everybody that's listening, and how powerful that is when you are in front of something more often and on email, it's, you can add so much value to that audience. And the more value you add to that audience, or the more value you add in life, the more you get back. And it's
Totally.
Sorry?
Totally. I'm a big fan of that. You just got to think about it. Like, this site's in the health and wellness space, right? It's like someone who's into one piece of content is probably going to be into another piece of content. So all I'm really trying to do is like just give them more of what they're into, and really create that repeat viewer, because like that is where a lot of the value comes from on these types of sites.
Yeah, certainly. And the cool thing about this business is that health and wellness changes all the time, which means there can always be a never-ending flow of content and value to add. And I know, so would it be mainly women that are, on this site, or is it a mixture? Because I know that women do devour like really good, high quality health content if they're into this health niche oftenly.
It's a fascinating one. The Google Analytics would say that is the way. But I think what's really interesting in this example is that I think it depends on who's doing the writing. Because if, for instance, I was going to hire a team of male writers on this site, and I think some of the content would start coming out more suited to males, that would change. So it's open to male and female, but I kind of feel like you get to kind of select that with the type of content you write. And like as a, really obvious example, if I write, an article on like 5 ways to fit into your bikini this summer, it's probably not going to get a massive male following. But and then on the reverse, it's like, the 3 best new beers coming out. That's probably likely to suit males.
That's it.
So it's like, I think you can alter that. You can have sway depending on the space.
That's a really good one, is 3 new beers you can have that are low carb and are actually going to help you keep the weight off, or whatever it is, or it's better, gluten free. I know that I'm a celiac and I'm gluten free, so gluten free beers for your, so you don't have gut issues and stuff like that. But that's digging way deep into your business and how ways that we can grow it. But I want to ask you a very different question, and that is, what is something that you learned through this process, Charley, that you never thought you would have learned and surprised you?
Oh, I got a good one for this one. I feel like I got a good one anyway. So, everyone who's listening to this right now is just hearing the success story of like, the deal's over the line and it's done. But what's fascinating is I actually passed on this deal. So I learnt some really interesting things in negotiating. So when I was putting this deal together, I put an offer out there and it got declined. Well, it didn't get declined. They had conditions on the sale that I wasn't happy with. So I passed. So an offer had been put together and then it fell through. I wasn't happy with the terms and a few things. And I was like, right, I don't want to get myself into a mess that I know is going to be really painful to deal with. So I'm going to pass on this deal and just acknowledge there's always another deal. You can find another site. Like, it doesn't matter how good the opportunity is. If it's not right for you, it's not right for you. So I passed on the deal. And then I dare say this person attempted to sell the site somewhere else, or, put it online somewhere and all the rest. And then a few weeks later, they actually came back to me. And like the positions had really changed then. So what I noticed in this experience is that, going into the deal is like they definitely had, I'll call it more power than I did. They had the leverage. because their whole thing was, well, we'll just take it to the market if we're not happy with what happens from here. And they kind of leveraged that a little bit more, where once they'd come back to me, they'd obviously had a horrible time trying to sell it online. Like that is, one of the things, I mean, I can only imagine, like I hear some horror stories of people that put sites online in a marketplace and they just get smashed with terrible questions and people going MIA and a whole bunch of things. And I dare say they had a little bit of that experience. And when they came back to me, is like, I knew I had the power position then. Like I knew that from a negotiating position, this was going to be a time when I could even negotiate harder. I could go into this and ask for more based on what had happened. And I did that. So and then at any time they would bring up points and they would say something like, well, you didn't say that before. And I'd go, yeah, but you've obviously come back to me for a reason. It's like, if you really want this deal to happen, well, then this is how it's got to work. Otherwise, you can continue doing what you're doing. So once that dynamic had changed and things had kind of worked more to my favor, I got an even more favorable deal. And I've never had that happen before, but this is something I would really like to replicate into future deals. So I think for myself is like any deal I look at is I really want to come into them with I'm happy to walk away with this mindset. Like I'm only going to take on the deals that are great for me. And if it's not, I'll walk away and they can either come back or I'll just wait for that next one.
That's such an amazing lesson. And just knowing what you want and knowing your own value. And I want to really open this up a little bit more because I think it's going to be very valuable for everybody listening. And I've seen this happen to people in, different other like investments and stuff where they put offers down. The person said no, and they've come back months later and they've kind of said, I want to take your offer. And the person who was initially looking at it goes, well, hang on a second, I'm just going to reevaluate that. And they offer less. And they end up picking it up and get an amazing deal. And it sounds like you've done just that, Charley, because you are an attractive buyer. And that's something that I'm going to be talking about in another episode that I'm going to be recording this week with a renowned broker on how to become an attractive buyer. And this is something that I teach my clients, as you know, Charley, is that when somebody is an attractive buyer, it makes it so much easier to sell the business, and they actually want to sell that business to that person. And the reason being is because you're right, there's so many people that put things up on, marketplaces for sale, and they get hounded by so many stupid questions, and they speak to probably hundreds of people who don't know much about buying websites at all. And it's crazy how many people try and get into this game and just end up going nowhere because they don't do themselves any sort of favors in sort of educating themselves how to do this. And you can go educate yourself any way you want, but it's such a valuable thing to become an attractive buyer. And what an attractive buyer is, like I said, is knowing what you can do and knowing whether that website is worth your time, and also knowing the language to speak, knowing what to say, knowing what questions to ask, knowing what to look for. And you can't fake being an attractive buyer. You have to have been in the industry or been learning about the industry for a good couple of months, if not years, if you're doing it, every now and then. But if you're doing a good solid few months and learning this sort of stuff, you can really become an attractive buyer. And I think that's one of the most powerful and underestimated attributes of a person who is looking to buy a website.
Definitely. I don't think you can hype that up enough, in all honesty, Jared. Like, it's such an important thing. Like, how you handle the buying process and how you operate through it can make all the difference with your deal. It's like you could offer the best price, but if you behave like an arrogant dick, I'm just going to say it, like there's a good chance of getting a no, even though you have the best offer. Yeah. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And I have been, my ego sometimes is, I'm a very fast, give me the facts, give them to me fast. And it can be very off-putting, especially when I first started out. It's like I wanted to execute straight away, and I was pretty smart and pretty diligent and knew what I was talking about, but it was not an attractive approach. So it's not just the facts, but it's also becoming the person that somebody wants to, becoming a bit of an influencer in the deal as well, being the person that somebody wants to deal with. Like, I wasn't the best person to deal with when I first started, because I was just, let's get this done real quick. I just want to know this and that, and don't, let's just go, let's just do it. And people are like, whoa, like, come on, man. Like, so not that I was a dick about it, but my approach was very fast. And that's an important thing to understand too. It's not just being knowledgeable, but being an attractive person to talk to too. So Charley, there's so many things. Like, we could just, like I said before, we could just keep going down the rabbit hole of all the things that you learned. But what's some of the highlights of the whole process, should I say, of this deal, getting put in front of you from a network or your network to the point where you've gone away and you've bought this business making a few $1,000s a month, and, you've got a plan and a strategy to grow it. I dare say you're super excited, and I'm really pumped and excited for you as well. But what are some of the highlights up until actually even today?
Wow, where to start is, like, I'm really excited to get into it, in all honesty. And there really is two parts to this. Like, number one is, you've got the whole side of, like, finding and executing on a good deal. So just finding a deal and then getting it over the line to the point of, like, it's yours. And I have a lot of fun in that time. But then the other side of it is that if you're really good at that part, but then you're not ready to get into the work and, set your team up or do whatever's needed to be done to take the site to this next stage, then, look, you kind of miss out on all the, like, a lot of the upside. So for me, it's like, one part of me is just, like, thrilled, excited, certainly learnt a lot from buying another online business. But then there's this other side of me that's just, like, eager as hell to start tearing into it. Like, it's kind of like we've just got the house plans and we're allowed to build. So going in there, permits approved, let's get to work, in all honesty, is kind of the attitude I'm taking.
Excellent. That's so cool and so exciting. And I know that feeling very, very well. And thank you so much, Charley. I want to wish you a massive congratulations again. I know that your plan to grow this thing is awesome. I know you've got your team ready to go. You've been crushing it, doing a lot of research and helping and aiding the team in growing it, and some things that you're doing yourself personally too. So I'm super pumped for your journey, really excited for that. And I just want to say thanks so much, Charley. Where's the best for people to go away and find more about you?
Look, the best place to find anything online for me is charleyvalher.com. I'm sure we'll put a link somewhere near this episode if people want to check it out. I always kind of post what I'm getting up to, and you can see a list of my projects if I'm disclosing them. But this site won't be up on there yet. I tend to keep it private till I'm ready to share. But I want to say a massive thank you to you, Jared, and the Buying Online Businesses community, because it's like it really gave me the confidence to execute well on this deal. And I probably wouldn't have been going as hard in this space without your influence. So massive thank you. Great to have another side into the portfolio, and it's shaping up really well now.
Thanks so much, Charley. I really, really appreciate those kind words. So, guys, please, if you like this episode, go away, hit the subscribe button, also like it, leave a review, and we look forward to speaking to you soon.